What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is kind of an impromptu video because as you can see, I'm holding the Google Pixel 6 Pro and I just received mine a couple of days ago, and I'm currently in the process of reviewing that phone so that I can get that out for you guys. But over the course of the past few days, through scrolling social media, and if you're familiar with MKBHD and his content, there's been some discussion about the Google Pixel 6 and the Google Pixel 6 Pro and their battery life. And in today's video, I really wanted to talk about that because it didn't sit right with me. And I know MKBHD makes excellent content. I've been following that guy for a very, very long time. I love the videos that he makes. But I wanted to dive into today's video, why he may have gotten some of the results that he did. And if you're seeing something similar along that lines, why you may be getting some of those results. And I want to talk about how we measure battery life in phones and why we may need to change how we do it. Now, I mentioned that MKBHD said he was getting kind of poor battery life. I think he mentioned that he was getting around 3 to 4 hours of screen on time throughout the day, which is not really good. I was getting that on my Pixel 4 XL, and we all knew how bad battery life was on that phone. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about why some people may be getting better battery life on their devices than maybe MKBHD or some of these other reviewers or individuals may have gotten on theirs. I watched a ton of reviews before Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro came out, and a lot of them did not mention that they had battery life issues. It seems like MKBHD was the first one that mentioned it, and then it's like the floodgates open and all these other reviewers or all these other individuals started mentioning that they were having the same experience. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just looking at the situation for what it was, right? And before anybody hops on this video and says, well, iPhone 13 has the best battery life, I'm gonna go on record and I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna say right off the bat, iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max have stellar battery life, and it's better than this phone. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. I'm not being biased. My favorite devices have been Pixel devices probably since their inception, and I've always typically used Android, even though I do use iOS and iPhone as well. But anyway, getting back to our original topic, a lot of reviewers and just people that I saw on social media were saying that they were getting anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours of screen on time when it comes to the battery life on their devices, which by standards, like, that's not bad at all. That should be more than enough to last you through a day pretty comfortably, right? And there's nothing wrong with this, but it seems like as new software and new hardware comes out, we keep moving the goalpost, and looking at what was already adequate or already fantastic is now being terrible. I saw some people saying that Pixel 6 Pro and Pixel 6 had terrible battery life, and in my few days of using this phone, hasn't been anywhere near terrible. A lot of people use screen on time as the metric for measuring whether a phone has good battery life or not. And while to me it is a metric, it's not the full story. It doesn't tell the full story of whether a phone has good battery life. And so I really wish we would get away from using screen on time as a metric for measuring good battery life, because in reality, it's only one piece of the pie. I mean, there are plenty of things that contribute to battery drain throughout the day, whether it's listening to music, your cell service, or your Wi-Fi signal, how strong that is, or even apps running in the background. And so let's talk about that a little bit. When I unboxed this phone, straight out of the box, the Pixel 6 Pro comes with 5G enabled. Now, my experience with 5G has been spotty at best. I mean, I live in an area where they do offer millimeter wave 5G, but in all honesty, I don't really see a huge difference in load times and speed of anything really when I'm using 5G as opposed to LTE. But that's just my experience. Now, if you're in a similar situation or similar circumstances like I have, what that does is it causes a lot of drain on your device because your device is constantly hunting for signal. I don't know if it's the modem or the software. I know some phones do have this, but the ability to go down to whatever the stronger signal is. For example, if I'm using 5G and that signal is not as strong as 4G, please go back to 4G or LTE so that it could conserve battery life and just maintain a stronger signal. But those are things we don't have any control over. If you're affected by that, just turn off 5G. It's really kind of a hot mess right now. It's really not where it should be, where we're using it in these phones and it's like a really necessary feature. LTE has been perfectly fine for me where I live. And then there's other things that I mentioned, right? So there is listening to music or podcast. When you're doing those things, even though your screen is off, your phone's still using battery. Because they're putting better audio drivers in these devices, they require more power. So typically if I have my phone running and I'm just listening to music, whether I'm doing something else in the house, or even if I have my Pixel Buds or Bluetooth earbuds in, that's gonna drain off your battery as well, and it's not using any of your screen. So you kind of see what I'm getting at here. There are all these other factors outside of just using apps and having our screen on that contribute to battery loss and battery drain over the course of the day. So to me, that's why we should not use screen on time as the only metric for measuring whether a phone has good battery life or not. And something else interesting that I noticed, now I was on the Android 12 beta on my Pixel 4 XL before I got the Pixel 6, which comes with Android 12 out of the box. But if you notice, Google changed the battery usage screen completely with Android 12. And at first, I was like, I hate this change. Like, I hate the fact that I can't go in there and just see my screen on time. But the more that I think about it, the more that I use this device and just think about that whole space of measuring battery life and whether it's good or not, I think it might have been intentionally. I think they purposely hid screen on time behind additional menus because they didn't want people to necessarily use that as the end all be all when it comes to measuring good battery life. And even if you're like me and you like seeing those facts and figures and those metrics, there are better apps that are available out there to be able to do that. One of the first ones that come to mind is AccuBattery, which I've been using on this phone, and I found that it's been way more accurate than digging through the menus and trying to figure out what my screen on time has been. Last thing I want to touch on is take into consideration too that whether you're doing photography or video, which these cameras this year are better. I'm not going to spoil anything because like I said, I'm still working on the review, but they are better and they're shooting 4K 30 frames per second and 4K 60 as well for video. All of that requires more processing power, which requires more battery power. So when we take into consideration that people are probably filming more on their cameras than they usually would, and then, you know, these reviewers put these phones through their paces, right? So they test them with graphic intensive games as well and see how they run, which requires a lot of power also. All of that has to be taken into consideration, and because of that, most likely more people are running through their battery a lot faster than they normally would. I've been using this just like I would daily drive any other phone. I'm not really into heavy gaming. I do love video and photography, but usually I'm using a dedicated camera for that. So my cell phone or my Pixel is usually not my go-to camera, but for most people it is. And I think it was designed to be able to do like a little bit of that pretty well. Not be a dedicated shooter for individuals, but more so like, hey, I'm out and about, I want a good camera or I want to capture good video. You're able to do that on this phone, and because you probably won't be using it as a dedicated camera, you don't have to worry about draining your battery off that fast. So my point is, instead of looking at screen on time as the metric for how we measure good battery life, really what we should be asking is this battery good enough to get me through my entire day with my regular normal usage? Like the normal usage of an average person, can they make it from the time that they take their phone off the charger in the morning to the time they go to bed? My experience has been for this phone, absolutely. But your experience may not be that. But I think it's a better way to measure good battery life. And I think it's why Google advertises, even on their website, they don't say how many hours of screen on time you get. They say all day battery life, because that's about the average for what most phones are able to do. Even the iPhone 13, even though it's an impressive phone, has excellent battery life, it's not a 2-day phone. Now, I don't want to excuse Google completely. I mean, the Pixel 6 Pro does have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in it. So I feel like there's more that they can do to improve battery life. I feel like with hopefully software updates, they can fine tune that and get it to be even better. But right now, it's been perfectly fine. Overall, my battery life has been fine on this phone. Yeah, but those are just a few of my thoughts so far on the Pixel 6 Pro's battery life. I am currently still working on the reviews. I have the Pixel 6 that I'm working on, but I just wanted to put this out here because I didn't want anyone to be overly concerned that battery life on these phones is terrible. I saw some people were canceling their pre-orders. I don't feel like you need to do that. If you really wanted a Pixel device, still go ahead and get one. Battery life so far has been really good for me, and I hope that's your experience as well. So yeah, stay tuned for the full review, which will be coming out pretty soon. As always, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Till then, everybody take care. Peace.